Hey everyone, welcome back to the game room. My name is Jason. Let's win one for the Gipper. Just because you're the first at something doesn't mean you'll be the best at it. This holds true for the newest review to hit Game-Rave TV, Bases Loaded 96 Doubleheader, which was the first PlayStation baseball game. Doubleheader, meaning to play two games of professional baseball back-to-back, might also be a cheeky nod to it being the first time Bases Loaded was released on two rival systems in the same era. Previously, it was strictly just on the NES and the Super NES with a port to the original Game Boy. Bases Loaded 96 is a typical baseball game where it's actually dated a year ahead of itself because all the stats are from 1995 and the game was released in 1995. There are 700 officially licensed baseball players across generically named sports teams. All teams are represented, but it's just their cities you get to see on the scoreboard. 7 fictional stadiums are playable, 6 of which were clearly their unnamed real-life counterparts like Comiskey Park, along with a bonus ballpark to round out the basic festivities. Once you're into the main game, you'll have the obligatory one-off exhibition game, get to play in the championship series, or set up your own custom season. If you're like me, you can have fun with the 13-game season, or choose the 26, 52, or the full 162 games of regulation. Once you've chosen your destiny, you can set up trades before starting, or go head first and play with the cards you're dealt, possibly even literally. The game does keep track of your season stats, allowing you the chance to swap in players, make substitutions during the game, and yank those players who just can't get the offensive going. Me being me, I played with my Chicago Cubbies, and I can assure you Sammy Sosa spent most of his time on the bench, even if it was my fault for swinging at every pitch. With everything in its place, it's finally time to play ball. The 7 stadiums are rotated in and out as you play, so if you're in for the long ball, or haul, you'll regretfully become accustomed to your surroundings fairly quickly. With that in mind, it's time to discuss the 500-pound elephant in the room, the game's visual style. Bases Loaded always had something unique going for it, whether it was seeing the catcher's hand move to catch the ball, or the reverse camera angle in Volume 4, you could always expect something different from it. Here on the PlayStation and Saturn, that gimmick is a bit more unrefined. The camera angle comes in 3 stages: batting, pitching, and fielding. Our third place camera uses the then standard at the time sprite-based players on a 3D background. It's in the close-up of batting and pitching that things take a curious turn. The background of these visuals are still essentially sprite-based, but now the player sprites are 2D versions of 3D models. Think Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct. At first, it's particularly jarring to swap between the visual styles, but as time goes on, you pretty much get used to it. What the real issue here with the visual style is the actual players themselves. Their animation is fantastic, but Jaleco did nothing to smooth out the rough polygon effects that early 3D modeling suffered from. This lack of touch-ups causes the batter and pitcher to look like they're wearing diapers. All it would have taken was the smallest of post-production touch-ups to make it work. Alas, it's Pampers from here on out. Gameplay is standard fare for the genre, though here Jaleco allows the game to handle running and fielding, so all the player must worry about is throwing and swinging. Players can make substitutions and the like, with little touches here and there sprinkled throughout. The HUD will display the batter's last few attempts and the pitcher's stamina. Pitchers have a limited pitch count and would-be managers will need to plan their rotation accordingly. Having played baseball games on and off throughout the last 3 decades, Bases Loaded 96 is the first time I ever actually cared to figure out how to play manager. Sure, the duties are fairly thin compared to some of the crazy things modern-day baseball games offer, but to be simple enough for even me to get into it speaks volumes. Speaking of volumes, Bases Loaded has some interesting tweaks between its original Sega Saturn version and the later PlayStation release, not all of which we'll cover here. In Sega's incarnation, the game will visually call fair balls, where on the PlayStation it's unseen. Likewise, the Sega Saturn version will verbally call balls and strikes, but Sony's version will only call out the strikes. Fair guess would be either it was too quick of a port or they left the audio clips out for space reasons with the PlayStation's RAM. As you would expect though, the PlayStation version has much better visuals, and not just because of the smoother stadium visuals. Sega's version has a rather laughable problem in the outfield. If fielding a deep ground ball, players can clearly see there's no background, no crowd, no city skyline, it's just black. Looking closer though, and it's discovered that the crowd texture is on the same level as the grass texture. During a fly ball or potential home run, if the ball is near the outer corners of the stadium, the Saturn version stadium does a bizarre switch between 2 different camera planes to give the effect that the crowd is indeed as high as they should be. Most of the time it's subtle, but if it's a corner pocket shot, you'll see the entire stadium rotate like a Tetris piece before swapping camera planes. One last bit of curiosity between the two is that the Saturn's field camera is hilariously close to the action, more than likely to hide the lack of outside world. The PlayStation version is pulled way back, allowing for easy view of all the action. It's a wild set of trade-offs between the two where neither is the clear winner in a comparative debate. If there was anything truly eyebrow-raising with Bases Load's 32-bit incarnation, it's that the game is ridiculously even-tempered. In my 13-game season, there was only one instance where it felt like there could have been rubber banding issues, except it was on both sides of the pitch. In the first inning, the computer scored 3 runs off my best pitcher. Halfway through that same game, the computer suddenly caused 2 errors and wouldn't pull their starter, allowing me to easily tie the game. 5 of the final 6 games all went into extra innings, including one that went the full 18 innings maximum that, if reached, the game is called and you must replay that entire game over again. Sadly, despite my noble first place ranking through most of the season, my final 3 games ended in losses and my Cubbies were sent packing home. Said seasons last about 30 minutes to an hour and a half per game based on the amount of innings played, so having clocked in an easy 15 hours of game time through a completed season, I can add another PlayStation to the pile of completed games. When it comes to reviewing Bases Load 96, especially 20 years after the fact, it can be best to be described as an unintentional remaster of the NES originals. It does what it needs to do, gets the job done with minimal pomp and circumstance, and is easy enough for even non-sports folks like myself to enjoy it. While it doesn't do anything really wrong, it also doesn't really do anything spectacularly either. On the Game-Rave.com scorecard, both versions would score an average 5 out of 10. If you're looking to pick one up, know that the PlayStation has 2 long box variations that are each average about $10. The Saturn version only has a single release that averages about $20. Alright, that's it for this episode. One more down, another 1,200 plus or so games to play through and review. But hey, who's counting? Be safe, and I'll see you guys next episode, and if nothing else, the weather is finally changing. Get outside and play some ball. I'll see you next episode. Take care. Just because you're the first at home, first sentence, I already f***ed it up. That's pretty good. Since baseball players across it's really hard to keep eye contact and read. Get right. I should just read. Bases Loaded 96 is a bit of a misnomer. Misnomer? There are 700. Be safe. I'll see you next episode. And as always, check our community page on the. I can't tell if I'm in focus or in park. Round out stadium. The Saturn version stadium does a bizarre switch, and you probably heard that on camera. Systems in the same area. Same era. God, this is never going to get done.